Shalom. We are back. Continuing with our look at the triennial Torah portion. Forgot to push the mute button on the microphone. It's okay. We today are continuing with our look at the book of Genesis. We are concluding, actually, the book of Genesis, Bereshit. We are going to go ahead and deal with some of the important, things that I see as important things in the chapter, and also deal with a couple of the theological concepts that we see within the chapter. So we're going to go ahead and look. We'll just go ahead and read through chapter 50, Genesis chapter 50, and we'll go ahead from there. So let me go ahead and put this up on the screen here. This is the last chapter. Bereshit. Chapter 50. Chapter 50. 1 second here. Let me go ahead and put this up here. All right. Go ahead and read for us.
Genesis chapter 50. And Yosef fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Yosef commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel, and 40 days were completed for him. For so are completed the days of embalming, and the Mitzrites wept for him 70 days. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Yosef spoke to the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, See, I am dying. Bury me in my burial site, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. And now please let me go up and bury my father, and return. And Pharaoh said, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. And Yosef went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, and the elder of his house, and all the elders of the land of Mitzrayim, and all the house of Yosef and his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones and their flocks and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. And they came to the threshing floor of Echad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they lamented there with a great and very heavy lamentation. And he performed 7 days of mourning for his father. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Echad, they said, This is a grievous mourning for the Mitzrites. That is why its name was called Abel Mitzrayim, which is beyond the Jordan. And his sons did to him as he had commanded them. For his sons brought him to the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite, as property for a burial site. And after he had buried his father, Yosef returned to Mitzrayim, he and his brothers, and all who went up with him to bury his father. And Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead. They said, What if Yosef hates us and pays us back all the evil which we did to him? And they sent word to Yosef, saying, Before your father died, he commanded, saying, This is what you are to say to Yosef. I beg you, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the Elohim of your father,
And Yosef wept when they had spoke to him. And his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, "See, we are your servants." And Yosef said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of Elohim? And you intended evil against me,
But Elohim intended it for good, in order to do it as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive. And now do not fear. I provide for you and your little ones." So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And Yosef dwelt in Mitzrayim, he and his father's household. And Yosef lived 110 years. And Yosef saw Ephraim's children to the third generation. The children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were also born on Yosef's knees. And Yosef said to his brothers, "I am dying, but Elohim shall certainly visit you and bring you out of this land, to the land which he swore to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov." And Yosef made the children of Israel swear, saying, "Elohim shall certainly visit you, and you shall bring up my bones from here." And Yosef died, being 110 years old. And they embalmed him, and he was placed in a coffin in Mitzrayim.
All right. Okay, very good. All right, lots of interesting things that we see over here. Let's go back up to the top here. To verse 1, where it says, "And Yosef fell." And Yosef fell. When we look at this, is interesting. We see kind of the end of an era. I don't know, the end of a significant pivot point within the family of Israel. Of course, the death of Yisrael. This was very hurtful for Yosef, of course, probably more so because of the fact that he missed out on such a significant part of his father's life because of the things that happened with him, and we see that there's great sorrow here with Yosef when he says, when he actually falls. The scripture says that he fell on his father's face. That word there. Hold on one second. Let me just pull up for us here. This word here is nafal. Nafal isn't interesting here. This word means to fall. It literally means to fall or to be accepted or cast down or to cast lots. Or it can also mean to cease or to die, to fail, to fall down, to fall away, all of these things, right? It has all of these different connotations, right? Of the idea of falling. It's interesting when we look at Yosef here, we can think about the idea of his countenance falling, right? His, his being, his soul, right? Yosef, who he was, diminished in a way because of the fact that his father has died. And so it's interesting when we look over here and we see kind of seeing as how though the Egyptian culture was such a significant part of Yosef's life, because of the fact that he was yet a lad whenever he, made it to Egypt. The first thing that he requires here is for his father to be embalmed. Now it's interesting. This is another thing, kind of, when we looked at, say, for instance, where's my cursor at here? If we remember back where Yosef, had his diviner's cup, right? And again, we knew, when we looked, that, the knowledge that Yosef acquired, it came from the Most High. But yet there was this custom, tradition thing that seemed foreign to Israel, to those of who follow after the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But it was familiar to the place where he was, again, Egypt. Again, like we talked about before, we don't have a codified law as of this moment. And so, there was no, as far as we can see, any prohibitions of having a diviner's cup. Right? There was no prohibitions of doing things that were like unto these other nations at this point. Those things don't exist. And so it's interesting when we see here this thing with embalming, where this clearly was, an Egyptian method, right? They were, were experts at it. By the way, it's interesting that this process was such a long process. I last year, probably not quite a year ago, I actually met someone who is a mortician. He embalms people, right? And so I learned some things about embalming, and they literally remove all of the fluids from your body. They remove all of the fluids from your body and somehow replace those fluids with other kind of he said like sanitation fluids. And so I don't know what the methods were for these people, but I could just imagine how difficult it would be to actually drain the liquids from a human body. Seeing as how, water slash liquid is such a high percentage of what makes up our body. Without knowing what the process is, I can see based on the fact that it took them 40 days to complete this process in terms of, I guess that it would entail removing whatever needed to be removed and then adding whatever it was that needed to be added. This was a very involved process. But when you think about embalming, what is it? What is it that's actually being preserved here? What are they doing? They're preserving the body. They're preserving the body for what purpose? For what purpose are they preserving the body? Like, it's something that I, was thinking about. Because he could have just, I guess if we think about the fact that he wanted to take the body back to the land, that could be a reason. But it seems like as long as it took, they could have actually, went back in a shorter amount of time than what it actually took for them to actually embalm the body. And so it's interesting when we look at this whole thing here, with this whole thing with this embalming situation, that what is this process that they're going through? It caused me to think about kind of the things that we do here, in these current times. It's strange to me, even though it's the only thing that I know. But even when I think about the only thing that there is that I know, like, we do this thing when when our loved ones, they die, and we put them, in this viewing place, and we go and look at this shell of a body, this lifeless shell. We think about the time when they were alive, but oftentimes when we're looking at this actual shell of a body, sometimes these things don't even, I don't know why I said these things. Sometimes these things don't even look like, what once was. And it just caused me to think about, like, what is this thing that we're doing? I understand, being sad, when our loved ones pass away. But I think some of the sadness probably has to do with, it has everything to do with, I would say, with our own selves and our inability to, from that point forward, to be able to be with, experience that person anymore. So there's mourning, right? But it just when I'm looking at this thing here, it's just like, how much mourning. Wow, what just happened? Hold on one second here. Okay, all right. We're having some technical difficulties here. Technical difficulties. Sorry about that. Let's see if we're able to continue without my screen deciding that it doesn't want to do what I tell it to do. All right, so we're talking about this thing that we see over here with Yosef, with the loss of his father. And so, it caused me to think about the fact that what did at that time, what was kind of the thought of the afterlife at this time? Because sometimes, when we think about someone who we've lost, if we understand that that person had a life that was dedicated to the Father, we can be sad they're gone, but we can also understand that their eternal future would have been secured, right? But if, likewise, we have another individual who kind of, didn't live a life that was unto the Most High, not only have we lost someone, forever in this realm, but we've also lost someone, in eternity. Okay, so it's interesting when we think about these people who lived in this other time where the idea of afterlife, what was it? Because when you think about from an Egyptian standpoint, part of this thing that they were doing here with this embalming, they're preserving this body because perhaps in the afterlife future, the body could be like retaken or something. I'm not
They
exactly.
brought their cats and stuff with them too. They embalmed their animals.
I know, but for what purpose? What was it for? Like, was it for heaven?
Or whatever their form was.
Well, it's interesting when we think about the scriptures, right? When we think about the scriptures as we know it, the people, if we think about the state of man, the state of man at this point is, what do we say about these people who Yeshua hasn't yet come yet? The redemption of mankind hasn't happened yet. They don't even know of it, right? Israel, as a nation, as a people, chosen or otherwise, doesn't even exist at this point, right? It's a family. It's just a big old family, right?
Yeah.
They haven't been established as the chosen of the Most High in terms of, being a people, right? These are simply Abraham's children, and they're receiving the blessings that were given, living off the blessings that were given to Abraham. And so when we think about their, what happens to someone when they die, the hope, I would say, is not there. You can remember one's life that had a good life, but that's, I don't know how much further you can go beyond that. And so when you think about the idea of preserving this body, you're preserving this person to remind you of the goodness that was.
Not for the future.
Not for the future, right? Because what is the
It wasn't the
future?
Like from our studies from at this time, people wasn't really thinking about an afterlife. At this time, within Israel, they would just be gathered to their fathers, like, but that wasn't like some afterlife type.
Yeah, that's kind of the language of going to gather to the fathers, was a place where the fathers are gathered when they're dead. But what they did over there, they don't really talk about that. It wasn't something that was kind of expounded upon for our understanding.
I also feel like people dealt with death more at this time than now.
What do you mean?
I mean, pretty much we have medical systems, healthcare.
You think more people died?
I mean, people they was literally using human excretion for fertilizer and getting, what is that, E. coli and all that stuff, just from eating and having water that wasn't all the way purified. They would have to basically ferment, make beer and drink beer because that was safer to drink than drinking just regular water. So,
Beer.
Yeah, they would ferment it. So I'm just saying that
People died more. They dealt with death more.
they dealt death was more,
I don't know.
a thing.
That seems pretty prevalent there.
I mean,
I
don't
see
know
what
too
you
many
mean.
people
I
who died.
understand. You don't?
Not too many. I'm 40 years old and I just recently had a friend who died.
Oh, your life was kind of sheltered.
I guess.
I think that, but yes, I think that the idea of, again, they're embalming this person using these Egyptian methods. They're preserving what was.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not dealing with hope for
the future.
whatever happens next. It's just about kind of dwelling on the now. And so Yosef, who missed out on a huge chunk of his father's life now, is, we see him feeling this hurt because, he, at this point has some memories from when he was young. And the little bit of time that he had after, but the substance, of his life, he missed out on, right? And so he has to think about, he has little, I would say, to pull from. And so it's interesting when we think about, again, kind of this old thought process. I want to go over to, let's see here. If we go over to, one second here. Let's go to, let me pull up. second. Oh, I didn't put that in my notes here, but I'll find it very fast. Let's see here. One moment. Okay, let's see here. 31. 31. Oh, that's not the verse. Hold on one second. Oh, here we go. Read for us. Numbers 23, 9, and 10 here.
3. Numbers 23:9. For from the top of the rocks I see him, and from the hills I observe him. Look, a people dwelling alone, not reckoning itself among the nations.
Okay, verse 10. This is the verse right
It says, who shall count the dust of Yahob, and the number of 1/4 of Israel? Let me die the death of the upright, and let my end be like this, be like his.
here. Okay, very good. So this idea here, the death of the righteous, the death of the upright. What's this word here? Yashar. The death of the upright, the just. He said, let me die the death of the upright. Let my end be like his. What's this word here? Acharit. End, hence future. Oh, interesting. Remnant. And so when we think about this idea of this death of the righteous, when we think about this person in their righteousness, the righteousness is of course connected to their life, right? The righteousness is connected to their life. The things that they have done is the way that we're able to categorize them as being righteous, right? And the end, the point of, when everything stops, right, happens when they in fact die. And so again, when we think about the fact that these individuals, at this time, are coming to this place of mourning, right? They're mourning what was, the life that was, and there's no hope. There's no hope involved in any of this. Where it caused me really to think about Yeshua, right? If we go over to Matthew, Matthew 8. Read from verse 18 down to 22.
Matthew 8 and 18 says, and when Yeshua saw large crowds about him, he gave a command to go off to the other side. And a certain scribe, having come near, said to him, Teacher, I shall follow you wherever you go. And Yeshua said to him, The foxes have holes, and the birds of the heaven nests, but the Son of Adam has nowhere to lay his head. And another of his taught ones said to him, Master, first let me go and bury my father. But Yeshua said to him, Follow me, and leave the dead to bury their own dead.
Okay, very good. Yeshua here, you know, at a glance, may seem slightly insensitive to the emotions of this person, right? Whoever this person is, one of his taught ones, one of his disciples, right? Master, please, first, I'll follow you wherever you want me to follow you to. First, just let me go and bury my father, right? The person who birthed me, right? And he says, leave the dead to bury their own dead. Wow. Wow. Now it's interesting when we look at this verse over here, because when we see this one word here, dead. Here, let's see if it's one word before I sit up here and say this. Yes. We see this one word here, dead, leave the dead to bury the dead. Yeshua's really talking about two kinds of dead, right? From the context. You know, because someone who is this dead over here, this last dead, they can't bury anyone because they're dead, right? But this first dead over here, they're able to bury someone, right? So he's speaking of a different kind of dead. He's speaking of a spiritual kind of dead. But they're physically alive and they're able to bury people. But they're spiritually dead. He said, leave the spiritually dead people that are physically alive. Let them bury their own physically dead people. Right? Because at this point, their life is over. Their life is over. Their physical life is over. There's nothing else to have been done. When you think about Yeshua, what's Yeshua say about himself? That he's the way, the truth, and the life. Yeshua is about life. These people, there's nothing else that they can do and nothing else. There's nothing else that they can add to anything. Mm-hmm. And so when we think about his action, his reaction, when we think about it from kind of a spiritual perspective, understanding that, you know, the thing that they're trying to do is only about the memory of this person's life that was. When Yeshua, is about life everlasting. And this thing here that they're trying to, his business ain't about finding a beautiful place to live. The foxes, they got holes and birds got nests. The Son of Man, he don't even got a house. And you want to try to convince him to be concerned with these matters that aren't concerned with everlasting life.
He's not about that.
Right? He's about the kingdom, right? And things that pertaineth unto that. And this guy over here, um, is essentially saying, okay, let's pause the kingdom and let's go over here and take care of my dead father. But his father's gone though.
His time of anything that could have been done is done.
Yes, and you're not even doing anything for him at this point. And so when we think about back with Joseph and Israel, and his death, again, this is just another picture showing that this thing that they're doing has nothing really to do with everlasting life, and it's without hope. It's without hope. They're not dealing with what is to be. They're only dealing with what was, because they don't have at this point hope in Yeshua. Oh, what happened to my? Hold on.
Again, it happened again.
I don't know what's going on with this thing. And so let's keep on going. Let's think about this idea that we have in terms of the hope that we have in Yeshua, which of course these people at this time, we haven't even got to that point yet, right? Again, when we think about the quote unquote afterlife, we're talking about something that's really, it's non-existence. The way they thought about death is sleep, right? When you went to gather yourself to the fathers, you went to go sleep where they're sleeping at, essentially, right? And so, here, let me see if I'm able to get this thing back together here so we can put the scripture up here on the screen. 1 second here. difficulties. All right, so let's go over to 1 Corinthians 15.
1 Corinthians 15.
15. Let's go up to let's start at verse 13.
Start at verse 13. Says, and if there is no resurrection of the dead, then Messiah has not been raised. And if Messiah has not been raised, then our proclaiming...
Actually, you might as well start at verse 12.
For start at 12, it says, and if Messiah is proclaimed that he has been raised from the dead, how do some among you say that there is no resurrection of the dead?
All right, let's just think about the fact that, you know, there were people in these times of the apostles who didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead. And so rewind all the way back to Joseph and Yisrael's time. Well, whatever's true for the people who don't believe in the resurrection of the dead is also true for them, because I guess there wasn't no resurrection of the dead. So whatever it is that these people, that the apostle is saying to these people who don't believe in the resurrection of the dead and therefore don't believe in Messiah and who he is, all of these things are true then for the people who were before Messiah. These things are true for them. And so when we think about Yosef and Yisrael, you know, in their thoughts about what was going to be in regards to, you know, their loved ones, right? Without what we have in Messiah, whatever Paul is saying about these people is true for them. So go ahead and read 12 again.
12 again?
Yes.
It says, and if Messiah is proclaimed that he has been raised from the dead, how do some among you say that there is no resurrection of the dead? Mm-hmm. And if there is no resurrection of the dead, the Messiah has not been raised.
Yes, it's been raised.
And if Messiah has not been raised, then our proclaiming is empty, and your belief also empty. Mm-hmm. And we are also found false witnesses of Elohim, because we have witnessed of Elohim that he raised up Messiah, whom he did not raise up.
Yeah, we sitting up here saying that Messiah raised. Meanwhile, there ain't no resurrection, so he couldn't have raised. So we lying out here, basically. Right? Okay, keep going.
If then let me read that sentence again. It says, because we have witnessed of Elohim that he raised up Messiah, whom he did not raise up, if then the dead are not raised. For if the dead are not raised, then neither Messiah has been raised. And if Messiah has not been raised, your belief is to no purpose. You are still in your sins.
Still in your sins. Wait a second. Now, if all of this stuff is true that you're saying, then you're still in a state that is at enmity with the Most High. If the things that the apostles are proclaiming isn't true. And that goes all the way back. Something happened. Oh, yeah. Adam and Hava died when they ate of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. At that moment, there's a separation from the Most High, and there wasn't nothing to reconnect humanity back to the Most High. It didn't happen yet in the context of Yosef and Israel. And so the only thing that they had to think about was the preservation of this dead body and the memories that they had with their father while he was alive. Because they had no hope in Messiah, because Messiah had not even been born at this point, let alone resurrected. Okay, keep on going.
18 says, then also those who have fallen asleep in Messiah have perished. If in this life only we have expectation in Messiah, we are of all men the most wretched.
But verse 20 says what?
20 says, but now Messiah has been raised from the dead and has become the first fruit of those falling asleep.
Okay, so this is something that we want to think about, because Messiah raised people from the dead before. There was people that was raised from the dead in the Old Testament. People that was dead and that was brought back to life. But whatever it was that happened with Messiah, it did never happen before. Because it says, but now Messiah has been raised from the dead and has become the first fruit of those having fallen asleep. There was something unique in what happened with Messiah, that Messiah was the first fruit of, that never happened before. For those that have fallen asleep or dead. Right? And so we now have hope. We now have hope for eternity, right? That we too will be raised into incorruptible bodies, right? Where it talks about that further down, right? Where corruptible becomes incorruptible, right? So we have something that is unique from what back with Jacob and Joseph, something that they didn't yet acquire, right? The only thing that they had at that moment was to be able to look back and think about the memories. Here, read some more of this. Verse 21.
21 says, for since death is through a man, resurrection of the dead is also through a man. For as all die in Adam, so also all shall be made alive in Messiah, and each in his order, in his own order. Messiah the first fruits, then those who are of Messiah at his coming, and then the end, when he delivers up the reign to Elohim the Father, when he has brought to naught all rule and all authority and power. For he has to reign until he has put all enemies under his feet.
Okay, very good. So when we think about, again, the thing that we receive through Messiah, and then also thinking about what the forefathers would have been dealing with in terms of, this idea of death and things, we now have this hope of Messiah again that was in fact absent, from their life situation. And so when we think about, when we go back, let's go back over there, because that leads us to another thing that we see over here with, let's see here. We go down to, at first, starting with 15. So when we see with Yosef, with the sons of Jacob, the sons of Israel, they look back at, now with the death of their father, they look back at their own actions, the things that they did to their brother, and they're reminded back again of the the transgressions that they did, and then now there's doubt. There's doubt now concerning them with the relationship that they, have reestablished with their brother. They thought that after their father had died, that perhaps Joseph would again hold a grudge back with them again, right? That it would be rekindled. And read verse 19 there.
Verse 19, and Yosef said to them, do not fear, for am I in the place of Elohim? 20.
Yes.
It says, and you intended evil against me, but Elohim intended it for good, in order to do it as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive.
Okay, very good. So we have this this other thing that we see kind of introduced here when we think about kind of the divine providence of the Most High. The brothers are looking at what they did to Joseph and all of the things that happened in between, and they're failing to understand from a spiritual perspective what it is that the Most High is doing, because they obviously aren't connected to the Most High, right? They're looking at Joseph. They're looking at the way that he probably in some alternate reality might respond, if he were carnal, let's say. But we know that Yosef is in fact spiritual, right? And so he is not looking at things from this surface, physical, carnal level. And he says to them, you intended evil against me, but Elohim intended it for good. The thing that they did, when we look back at these evil acts that the brothers did, was in the plan of the Most High.
Yes, it was.
The Most High wanted for the brothers to behave wickedly. He wanted that wickedness. He allowed for that wicked. I don't know if he wanted the wickedness. He allowed for the wickedness to transpire
To meet the
for his end.
purpose.
Right? You intended evil against me. You, in your hearts, these people only had wicked intentions. And the Most High was able to use those wicked intentions for good in order to do it as it is to this day. To keep a great many. When you think about the amount of people, just the process of it all, right? They had to hear the dream of their brother, have the constant whatever that he would do in his youth
Annoying.
against them.
Annoyances.
Yes.
He's annoying to them.
Yes, I know all about that. And he had the constant annoyance, which created something in the hearts of his siblings where they all together, not one of them was wanted to rescue him. I'm saying they didn't want to do it because they didn't do it, right? Not one of his brothers said in their heart of hearts,
You know what?
I need to get him out of there. They might have said it, but they didn't do it. They might have came up with a plan, but they didn't work fast enough. Right? Not one of his brothers wanted him to be saved. They all in their hearts was all wicked. However, their wicked actions corresponded with what the Most High wanted to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at Exodus 9:16. Read 15 and 16.
It says, "Now if I had stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, then you would have been cut off from the earth. And for this reason I have raised you up, in order to show you my power, and in order to declare my name in all the earth."
The Most High allowed whatever happened with Egypt, all of the things that happened previous, for them to rise to the place that they was, and all of the evil, wicked things that they did in the meantime. All of that build up to happen just so he was able to show his power and knock them down. I wonder how many things that we're able to attribute to Egypt in the time that precedes the Exodus. And we're able to put all of those things into this verse 16 here, where he says, "For that reason I have raised you up." When I raised you up, that's allowing for Egypt to do all of the things that got them to that place, whatever that entails, so that he's able to show his power and knock them down.
It's funny. The reasoning is, I build you up so I can knock you down.
Yes, and allow for all of these things to happen beforehand.
In a foreknowledge type of a way.
Yes, exactly. In a predeterminationing type of way. And it helps for us to be able to understand a thing about the Most High, in that he allows things to happen in the preliminary because he knows the end from the beginning.
Yes.
If we're able to understand the fact that the Messiah was slain from the foundation of the earth, well, from the foundation, there's no reason for him to be slain because nothing happened yet. But if Messiah was slain from the foundation of the earth, that means that there were things that was put into place for something that didn't happen yet. But the Most High, of course, having access to those things, being outside of the multiverse. The only way we're able to really think about these things is in terms of the multiverse. I would say, because it's like these things are kind of,
It's like a simulator.
these things are kind of unfathomable.
Yeah. It's almost like a simulator. Like there's things that could happen that could go together, and if those things go together, they create this result for this scenario.
Yes, but if you're a mathematical person and you have these things that are called variables,
Yes.
right? I can make a plan for something,
Yeah.
but what if this thing happens? If this thing happens, it's going to cause me to have to make a detour, and I got to go down this road.
Yes.
And so it's interesting, on our way back from Cincinnati. We're on our way back from Cincinnati, and there was I don't, what was it, a traffic or something, accident. The
It was an
accident that
accident.
happened,
It was
but
an
it was like miles away from where we were.
Yes.
And so if you know anything about GPS, the GPS gives you an estimated time.
Yes.
Time is going by, and our estimated time is staying the same.
Yeah. Like we're traveling miles. And
We're traveling miles, and the time, like the time should be being shorter.
Yes.
Like it should be like if I got to be there in an hour,
Yes.
a minute later I'll be there in 59 minutes, and 2 minutes later I'll be there in 58 minutes. You know, that time shrinks.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we were traveling forward.
The time was going back.
We were traveling forward in time, weren't we?
Yeah, we were.
But time was standing still in our
ETA.
ETA time, which didn't make any sense because the prognosticators inside of the AI machine Google was prophesizing about this accident that had happened that was going to slow us up. And then at one point, it was not only moving, but that number was getting larger when we were moving forward because of a variable.
Something that I in my studies that I've I'm trying. I think I will incorporate. I don't know why I'm stuttering so much, but when you're doing something, do things without thinking about the end necessarily, because there's so many variables that the end, like you should do it with all your might. The end might not be what you think is going to be because of the variables that are outside of your control.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, like for example, like if you're planting a garden, you shouldn't be like.
I don't want the experience of planting a garden. I want
You want
the
the
end.
fruit of the garden. Yeah. But what happens if the deer comes and decides he's going to eat all of your vegetables?
I mean, that's just what it is. But it don't change. My expectation is tomatoes. My expectation is tomatoes. The deer may come. They're probably going to come and eat the tomatoes. But I'm not planting food for the deer. I'm planting food for myself. And
Anyway.
so I think that, but the thing is that we can't know what the variables may be.
Yes, it's unknown.
Because the deers that come, maybe those deers got hit by a car around the corner and they're never coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know what the variables are. But the Most High understands all of that because He is not confined by that. We're confined by the fact that we don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't know what the variables are.
Yes.
But the Most High knows what the variables are. And He is able to proceed accordingly. He knew that Israel's sons, that Jacob's sons, all 10 of them was wicked.
Yeah.
But he also knew that the wickedness that they did was only going to put Yosef in a situation that was going to be favorable for everyone. They couldn't have known that.
No, they couldn't.
Right?
So their actions wasn't based off of what the righteous future was going to be.
No, their
Their
actions was based off
their
of
wickedness.
wickedness. not knowing that the end of their wickedness was going to be righteous. But they had no idea, right? And it don't make what they did righteous either. He said, what he said? Oh. He said, oh, I'm in the wrong chapter. Hold on. Well, we could think about it in terms of Egypt, right? He said, for this reason I have raised you up, Egypt, in order to show you my power, in order to declare my name in all the earth. All of the wickedness that they did brought them to a particular place. And the Most High allowed it so that whenever he comes and shows himself, the people gonna know who's who. And the same thing is true over here. You, the sons of Jacob, intended evil against me. But Elohim intended that thing that you did, which was evil. He intended it for good. They didn't intend it for good. For them, it was evil. They didn't have no divine plan involved.
They wasn't like, we're going to do this so that he could go to Egypt, so that he could have these dreams.
No, they hated the dreams.
So that he could interpret Pharaoh's dreams, and do all of these. It wasn't nothing like that. It's just wickedness.
But the Most High knew ahead of time. Let's go over to Yirmiyahu. Read verse... read 4 and 5.
Says, now the word of Yahweh came to me, saying, before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. And before you came out of the womb, I did set you apart. I appointed you a prophet to nations.
That says, before I formed you in the belly, I knew you. Before he was even able to be known, he was known by the Father. And before he even came out of the womb, he was set apart, dedicated to the Most High before he was even born. Because the Most High knew the choices of this individual before he even made them. Did he make them make the choices, or did he use them because he was going to make those particular choices?
That's what I was going to ask, and I was going to ask if he does that with everybody.
I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing. If we even just think about Egypt, right? And that's what I was saying. When we think about Egypt, Egypt was a wicked nation. And so every wicked thing that they did, the Most High allowed for them to do it all the way up until the point where he destroyed them. And so the same thing can be true with all this wickedness that we see going on. The Most High allows for all of this wickedness to go on so that righteousness could come and prevail in the end. Either whether we're thinking about it from a positive perspective or a negative perspective. Here he's speaking to the prophet where he said, before I formed you in your belly, I knew you. In other words, he knew what kind of man he would be. And that's why he chose him. I appointed you a prophet to the nations because I already knew what you was going to be before you was it. Before you even came to be what I knew you was going to come to be, I chose you. And so the same thing is true when we think about us, even as individuals. We're chosen because of the fact that the Most High knows that we're going to be certain kinds of people. We don't know. We might not even know. We don't know what we have in store. But the Most High understands, who we are, just like he understands Jeremiah, who he was before he was even formed in the belly. What does it say over here in Romans? Read verses 28 through 30.
And we know that all matters work together for good to those who love Elohim, to those who are called according to his purpose.
Hold on. If that's saying that all matters work together for good to those who love Elohim, to those who are called according to his purpose, that's saying a lot. Because a whole bunch of bad stuff could happen to those that love Elohim. A whole bunch of bad stuff could happen, and all those bad things working together can bring about good for people who love Elohim. As I said, all things, right? We know that all matters work together for good. It don't say all good matters. It say all matters. That all matters work together for good for those who love Elohim. And so we look at all of these bad things that happen. And we can't do nothing but think about how bad these things is that happen to us. But that says we know that all matters work together for good for those who love Elohim. When we love Elohim, we're able to look at these things, these all the matters, whether they're good or bad, and understand that they work together. Those things work together for the good of us. Right? If I have a whole bunch of terrible experiences, I should be able to learn from those experiences, which is good. Even though not one of them was good in and of itself. But all of those things together, those all work together. Those things work together for the good of those that love Allah. That's what this is saying to me, right? And so if I just have a month of terrible things that's going on, nothing good, I should be able to go back and look at those things and analyze those situations and learn something from that. And now I'm able to move differently, or at least understand, things better, which is good. To those who are called according to his purpose. And so, we have to think about, if we think about this verse while we look back at Yosef and Israel and Joseph's brothers. They they meant to kill their brother. They meant to leave their brother for dead. They meant to profit off of the demise of their brother. But in the meantime, they were setting the atmosphere for the salvation of the region. If they hadn't done that evil thing, the entire region, however large that particular region is, however large that region is, it would have been lost had they not behaved in the way that they did. And so everything worked together for the good of those that love Elohim. Right there. Even though the people who were doing the things, they didn't have no thoughts for what the Most High was doing. It was all selfishness and wickedness and carnality. But the Most High, able to see all of these things, able to know the end from the beginning, was able to say, they'll do this. But in the meantime, I'll be speaking with Yosef over here and giving him wisdom and knowledge and understanding, and cause him to be able to be in a place when they tried to bring him down to nothingness and death. I'll be able to raise him up and cause him to be the savior of the nation in the known world at that time. Because of the fact that the Most High is able to make these predeterminations as it relates to us.
He knows you better than you know yourself.
Yes, he does.
And this kind of like, sets people straight on how Yeshua, the main purpose was, for Israel, but there's that spillover.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For where the nations, reap the benefit of what he did as well.
Yeah.
Just like in Egypt when Yosef, it was for the main family, it was for the future of Israel, but everybody around got blessed behind that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We're not able to see that. We're not able to see nothing. For these people that want to sit up there and act like salvation is just for Israel. Well, this is a perfect example. We look at the thing with Yosef and Israel and his brothers, and the family of Israel as a whole. The thing that, all the things they went through, we could say primarily was for the reconciliation of Yosef and his brothers and his father. All of that happened so that they can come together. We could say that was the primary function and purpose for what happened. But in the meantime,
In between time,
Egypt, who these people are pagans. In the meantime, Egypt was blessed. In the meantime, every single person who wanted to come up and partake in the blessing that was being poured out, they was able to come up and be blessed. Wasn't nobody at the door talking about, are you Israel? Oh, no, you can't come in.
right?
Nobody was doing that.
Nobody.
everybody who wanted to come up, they was able to pay a price, and they was able to get some goods because of. I mean, this is the Abrahamic covenant. This is what it is. Hold on. What verse is this? Hold on one second. He said, was this Genesis 15? No, it's not. I'm trying to find the exact verse. But the Abraham, oh, here it goes, 12. One second, let me put this scripture up here. Genesis 15, I mean 12. Hold on one second. Let me put this up here. Lost my cursor here. Oh, wait a second. Read verse 2 and 3.
It says, "And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you all the clans of the earth shall be blessed."
Okay, very good. This right here is the Abrahamic covenant. And so when we get to the Mosaic covenant, when we get to the new covenant, both of those things, which are actually different covenants, are both put into place to fulfill the Abrahamic covenant, which where it says that he's going to make you a great nation, bless you, make your name great, you'll be a blessing, you'll bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you, and in you all the clans of the earth shall be blessed. And so we're able to see the way that that is able to be manifest is the fact that whoever comes to Messiah, who's able to connect themselves back to the Most High, is able to be blessed and receive the blessings of the Most High when they come to Yeshua. All right? And so when we look over here at, if we go back to what we're looking at here in Genesis chapter 50, it's interesting when we look at this thing over here when we think about Messiah and what it is that he has done for mankind, and where it kind of continues on these lines here in terms of the fact that the Most High, he allows for all of these things to go on, in this earth, so that his will is able to be manifest. Let's look at what does it say in First Peter. First Peter 1. Start reading at verse 17 right there.
And if you call on the Father who without partiality judges according to each one's work, pass the time of your sojourning in fear, knowing that you were redeemed from your futile behavior, inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah, as of a lamb unblemished and spotless, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes, who through him believe in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, so that your belief and expectation are in Elohim. Now that you have cleansed your lives in obeying the truth through the Spirit to unfeigned brotherly love, love one another fervently with a clean heart, having been born again, not of a corruptible seed, but incorruptible, through the living word of Elohim, which remains forever. Because all flesh is as grass, and all esteem of man as the flower of the grass. The grass withers, and its flower falls away, but the word of Elohim remains forever. And this is the word, announced as good news to you.
Okay, very good. I really was trying to stop up here, but I didn't see no period, so we just kept on going, right? And so we think about the fact that the Most High, we said this already in terms of the Most High understanding the need and necessity for Messiah to come and making a way for him to come beforehand, right? Before the foundations of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes, right? The Most High made a way for you before you was born. Before you came around, he made things happen for you. I mean, that to me is pretty interesting. Right? If we go back and just think about Yosef and Egypt and Israel and the brothers, there's people who the Most High wanted to benefit, and they was going to die if they didn't have the provisions that were there, right? And the Most High did all of that stuff for the people who would have died without it. We look at this verse here, verse 20 here. He said, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes. Right? The thing that Messiah came to do, he came to do for us. Even right now, like Peter is talking to who's ever reading this letter here. But this same letter is true for us now in 2023. That Messiah was foreknown and indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for us. This thing was for us. And so it's interesting that we're able to see kind of the way that the Most High works in terms of him having this and making these predeterminations on things for the purposes of those that, you know, haven't even come to be as of yet. And the plans that he makes for his people that aren't yet. Right? We look over here, even at, you know, what Peter is speaking of in terms of, read 18 again, read verse 18 again.
Knowing that you were redeemed from your futile behavior.
These people who he talking about, they lived a life. What's this word mean? Oh my goodness!
It went off again. Maybe the computer needs to be updated.
Is it the computer? Or, I mean, the thing is plugged in. All right. So, looking at again Peter's observation here in regards to the foreknowledge of the Most High, looking at verse 18. Hold on, this reads differently. And for as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things, knowing that you were redeemed from your futile behavior. Oh, this is a word right here. Vain. Futile behavior. Let's see here. Vain. Empty, profitless, idle, vain, vanity. He says here, all of these things, whatever those things was that you inherited from your fathers, that you have been redeemed from, you know, we think about the, you know, whatever life that we may have lived or participated in prior to our knowledge of the true and living Elohim. And here, when we look at the words of Peter, he says those things were futile, right? This futile behavior. It's something that is pointless, right? Now, after the fact that we've been redeemed, right? The thing that caused for us, that was so serious and that was so had so much gravity to it, the fact that it was able to cause us to remain in a state of separation from the Most High as a result of the redeeming power of Yeshua HaMashiach. We're able to be separated from that status and redeemed back, reconciled to the Father. And so when we think about this verse here, in light of what we were initially looking at back in Genesis in regards to the brothers going back and thinking about what it was that Joseph at that point had already forgiven them for.
He wasn't even on that. So.
He was over it. He had forgot about all of those things already. He was so happy to see them. He could have cared less about the things that it was that they did. And when he does, in fact, think about the things that they did, he totally dismisses those things, causing them to, be reminded that the thing that they meant to do to him for evil, the Most High intended for good. And so this can only, when we think about this kind of applying this to our situation, for us to continually go back and try to think about and then have it even affect our current situations, the things that we have done in the past that we've given to the Master, that he's redeemed us from, that he's cleansed us of. Like, we can't go backwards and kind of think about the things that we've given over to the Master. They already dealt with what they did. They dealt with that already, and Yosef told them already, that's cool. If we wouldn't have did all that, y'all would all be dead. Right? And so, this is something for us to be able to look at and understand, kind of in that same kind of a vein, is that, it's almost as if nothing that the Master has said to them up until that point resonated. Because they went all the way back to something that he already had forgiven them for. And so the same thing could be true if, when we sit up here and we offer our repentance unto the Master, Yeshua, our Master, for all of the things that we may have done in the past. And then we want to revisit those things and cause those things to weigh down on us again after he's already cleansed us from those things. That's essentially what they did. Right? The Master, in this case, Yosef, he didn't even think about those things anymore. Right? He was just happy to be able to be reunited with his whole family. He all of his dreams had come true. But then yet they, because of this transition point in terms of their father dying, they had this major kind of transition thing that happened, which caused them to revert back to something that essentially was over, right? And so I'm saying that when we, thinking about this in terms of like an application, Messiah for us, when we give ourselves wholly over to the Master Messiah, he cleanses us of all of our past sins and transgressions,
Mhm.
and causes us to be able to be free from all the things that bind us. And then for whatever reason, we decide to pick up the chains somewhere and try to put them back onto ourselves again. Meanwhile, the master has already set us free. And so we have to be able to understand that as bad as a thing could have potentially been, when we give those things over to the master, he is able to give us a clean slate. The brothers here wasn't able to understand that their slate had been wiped clean already, right? And then they were just going back to things that had already been cleansed and redeemed, right? All right, so let's see here. What else do we want to look at before we finish over here? Oh, here. Let's go back over real quick to. So it's interesting, lastly, when we look over at the end over here with Joseph, where he similarly has for his bones to be to not have their final resting place be in Egypt, where he wants to go back to the land of his fathers. And so it's interesting that we kind of talked about this a little bit. When we think about this actually being kind of this physical thing that they were doing, right? Their bones, right? There's no life involved. These are the dead bones, the former place where your soul was housed, right?
Mhm.
Your bones. But I think that maybe the imagery of it, does bring some importance when you think about the idea of his, the final resting place of his bones, right? He didn't want for them to be there in Egypt, but back to where his fathers were. And in that regard, when you think about the fact that they didn't quite have a full understanding of what we think about as eternal life. But to a degree, you could kind of see where there's something that's kind of moving in that direction of the eternal, right? Because we know that when we in this life accept what it is that Messiah Yeshua has done for us, that we ensure life everlasting for us, and we're able to go and be with the Father. No S. Right? And so Yosef, when he before he dies, he wants for his bones to go back to the fathers, which even though it's kind of not the same situation, I think you're still able to look at that idea and see the picture of going to a place of origination, right? A place of promise, right? Because the place where the fathers, were laid is the promised land, right? And so there's an idea of an eternal resting place that exists in the place of promise, right? And so from a spiritual perspective, again, when we think about what it is that Messiah does for us, he allows for us to eternally be in the place of promise, which is actually with him and with the Father in eternity.
Yom Secular Shabbat.
What?
Yom Secular Shabbat. Times that is all Shabbat.
Yes. Yes. Very good. Okay, so that being said, I think that is all we have to say about Bereshit, chapter 50. And so, next week we'll be, God willing, on to Shemot, on to Exodus, and get into all of the exciting things that we have inside of there. But for now, we will say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.